Something happened in Tucson, Arizona, on the night of the 13th of February 2026 that changed everything about this case. And if you have been following the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, what you are about to hear is the breakthrough nobody saw coming. This is Ola Detective Files, and today we are breaking down the overnight SWAT raid, the 3 individuals detained, and the forensic evidence that put law enforcement on that doorstep. Stay with us, because this story moves fast, and every detail matters. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications, because this case is still developing and you do not want to miss a single update. The night is dark. The desert air carries the sharp metallic scent of incoming rain. In the Catalina foothills, one of Tucson's most upscale neighborhoods, the streets are silent. Then the silence breaks. Heavy armored vehicles known as Bearcats roll in without sirens. Tactical units from the Pima County Sheriff's Department move in formation. Radios crackle low. Every movement is deliberate. Every position is calculated. The target is a residential property located exactly 1.9 miles from the home where 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie was last seen alive. 2 individuals inside the residence are ordered to exit. They comply, walking out into the rain. At the exact same moment, less than a mile away near a local Culver's restaurant, a second team executes a high-risk traffic stop. A third individual is removed from a vehicle and detained on the spot. 3 people, 2 locations, 1 synchronized operation executed with the precision of a federal task force. News Nation senior correspondent Brian Enton was physically inside the police perimeter as this unfolded, making him the only journalist on the ground that night. What he witnessed was not routine. FBI vehicles arrived shortly after, floodlights cut through the desert darkness, the evidence response team moved in immediately. Ask yourself this: you do not mobilize this level of force based on a guess. So what exactly did law enforcement know that night that the public did not? That answer starts with a single piece of forensic evidence, and it is more significant than anything this investigation had produced in the 2 weeks prior. Before we go any further into that raid, you need to understand exactly who was taken from that house, because this is not just a case file. This is a person. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is a mother, a grandmother, and the woman you have seen sitting in the front row at NBC Studios, beaming with pride as her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, anchors the Today Show to millions of viewers every single morning. She is not a public figure. She is not a celebrity. She is a private woman who built a quiet, comfortable life in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona. The 31st of January 2026. Nancy spends the evening at her daughter Annie's home for dinner. Sometime before 10 p.m., an Uber driver drops her off at her residence. She goes inside. The garage door closes at 9:30 p.m. That is the last normal moment in this timeline. At 1:47 a.m. on February 1, her doorbell camera disconnects from its network. At 2:12 a.m., the motion detection software registers a presence outside her front door, but captures no usable footage. At 2:28 a.m., her remote cardiac monitoring device is severed from its network connection. 16 minutes. That is the window between the camera going dark and the medical device going offline. She is reported missing later that morning. And from that point forward, every clock in this investigation starts ticking at once. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. Now, here is where the investigation shifts from a missing persons case into something far more deliberate. Because what the surveillance footage captured in the early hours of February 1 was not random. It was calculated. Investigators pull footage from multiple sources: neighboring properties, ring cameras, commercial security systems along the surrounding streets. They are not looking for a face yet. They are building a movement map. Every frame is cross-referenced. Every timestamp is logged. The glow of forensic monitors fills the command center as analysts piece together a visual timeline frame by frame. What emerges is a figure, a single individual captured approaching Nancy Guthrie's front entrance in the early hours of the 1st of February 2026. The individual is wearing dark clothing. A mask covers the face. The movement is not hurried. There is no running, no panic. The pace is slow, deliberate, and controlled. That detail alone tells investigators something critical. This person had been here before, or had studied this location carefully enough to move through it without hesitation. The figure is seen on the porch, then the footage cuts. Not a technical glitch. The camera is manually disconnected from inside the network. Someone with access to that system, or knowledge of how to interrupt it, executed that disconnection at a precise moment. Forensic digital analysts flag this immediately. A random, opportunistic actor does not know how to kill a smart home security system from the outside. That level of operational knowledge points to one thing: prior access, prior planning, or both. The physical evidence left behind on that porch is now being processed. Biological traces are collected. Fiber samples are bagged, and buried inside that evidence is something that will take investigators 2 weeks to fully process. But what they find when they do will be the single thread that unravels everything. 2 weeks. That is how long it takes for the forensic laboratory results to come back. And when they do, the entire direction of this investigation pivots on a single data point. The biological traces collected from Nancy Guthrie's property are processed through the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, known as CODIS. This is the national database that holds genetic profiles from convicted offenders, arrestees, and forensic unknowns collected from crime scenes across the country. Analysts run the sample. They wait. The system cross-references millions of profiles in seconds, and then the result comes back unknown. No match in the existing database. But that is not the end of the process. That is actually where the real work begins. When a DNA profile returns no direct match, investigators shift to a technique called investigative genetic genealogy. This is the same methodology that cracked the Golden State Killer case after decades of dead ends. Analysts upload the unknown profile to genealogy databases and begin mapping family trees. They are not looking for the individual directly. They are looking for biological relatives whose DNA is already in the system. Cousins, siblings, parents, any genetic overlap that can anchor the unknown profile to a real identity. The forensic team works in shifts. Computer screens glow through the night as genealogists cross-reference family trees against geographic data, social media footprints, and known associates connected to the Guthrie property. The process is painstaking. It is not television fast, but it is precise. What the process produces is a narrowed pool of individuals with a biological connection to the unknown DNA profile recovered from the scene. That pool leads investigators to a specific address in the Catalina Foothills area. The same neighborhood, less than 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's front door. That address becomes the target of the February 13 raid. Now you understand why the FBI did not move sooner. They were not waiting. They were building a case that could hold up the moment they knocked on that door. And what they found inside that residence raises more questions than it answers. 3 people are taken into custody on the night of February 13, and the details surrounding each detention tell a very specific story about where this investigation is focused. The first 2 individuals are removed from the residential property in the Catalina Foothills, a young male and an older female. They exit the residence without resistance as tactical units secure the perimeter. Their identities are confirmed through subsequent reporting. Luke Daly, a man in his mid-20s with a documented prior criminal record, and his mother. They are separated immediately upon detention. Standard protocol. Investigators do not want shared accounts contaminating individual statements before formal questioning begins. The third individual is detained separately. A second male, intercepted during the synchronized traffic stop near the Culver's restaurant location. His connection to the residential property is not immediately disclosed by law enforcement, but the timing and coordination of his detention alongside the house raid makes one thing operationally clear: his presence that night was not coincidental. All three are transported to separate facilities, all three are questioned, and then, within hours, all three are released without charges filed. That detail stops a lot of people. Released, no charges. After a full SWAT mobilization, FBI evidence response teams, and a synchronized multi-location operation. How does that happen? Here is the forensic reality. Detention and arrest are not the same legal threshold. Law enforcement can detain individuals for questioning based on investigative relevance without meeting the probable cause standard required for a formal arrest and charge. The FBI needed access to those individuals and that property. The detention gave them both. What they were actually hunting for inside that residence was not a confession. It was something far more specific, something physical, something that, if found, would close the evidentiary gap between the unknown DNA and a confirmed identity, and the list of items on that search warrant is unlike anything this case has produced so far. A search warrant is a document that tells you exactly what investigators believe exists and exactly where they believe it is. And the warrant executed on that Catalina Foothills property on February 13 is extraordinarily specific. That specificity is itself a piece of evidence. The FBI evidence response team moves through the residence methodically. This is not a sweep. This is a surgical extraction. Every drawer is documented before it is opened. Every surface is photographed before it is touched. The team is not looking for general evidence of wrongdoing. They are looking for three specific categories of items. The first is a backpack, described in the warrant as dark in color, consistent with the bag observed on the figure captured in the surveillance footage approaching Nancy Guthrie's property in the early hours of February 1. If that backpack exists inside this residence, it places a direct physical link between this location and that porch. The second item is a pair of gloves, consistent with the hand coverings visible on the masked figure in the same surveillance footage. Gloves are critical in a forensic context because they retain biological transfer material on both interior and exterior surfaces even after repeated use. The third item is the remote cardiac monitoring device, the same device that was severed from Nancy Guthrie's network at 2:28 a.m. on February 1. If that device is recovered inside this property, the evidentiary implication is immediate and unambiguous. The team works for hours, floodlights illuminate every corner of the property, evidence bags are carried out and logged one by one. Neighbors watch from behind closed blinds as the operation continues well past midnight. Whether those three specific items are recovered is something the FBI has not yet confirmed publicly, but the fact that they knew exactly what to look for tells you the intelligence behind this raid ran far deeper than a DNA match alone. Here is something the headlines did not fully explain. Between the night Nancy Guthrie was reported missing and the February 13 raid, there was a significant institutional conflict playing out behind the scenes. And that conflict directly affected how fast this investigation moved. The Pima County Sheriff's Department was the first agency on the ground. Sheriff Chris Nanos and his team initiated the missing persons investigation, secured the scene, and began collecting physical evidence from Nancy Guthrie's property. Standard jurisdictional protocol. A missing person in Pima County falls under Pima County's operational authority. But the FBI has its own mandate. When a case carries indicators of a federal offense and the deliberate disconnection of a medical monitoring device, the sophistication of the entry, and the geographic scope of the surveillance footage, all qualified federal jurisdiction becomes a parallel track running alongside the local investigation. The problem is that parallel tracks do not always run smoothly. Sources close to the investigation confirmed to News Nation that there was a period of friction between the two agencies regarding the processing and transfer of forensic evidence, specifically the biological trace evidence collected from the property. The question of which laboratory would process it, under whose chain of custody, and on whose timeline created a procedural delay that investigators on both sides privately acknowledged cost the case valuable days. Sheriff Nanos addressed this tension publicly, carefully, and without naming specific points of conflict. But the language he used in press briefings was precise enough for anyone paying close attention to read between the lines. Every day that evidence sits unprocessed is a day the investigation stands still. And in a case where a missing 4-year-old woman is dependent on a cardiac monitoring device that has been offline since February 1, standing still is not a neutral position. That delay ends the moment the DNA result lands on the FBI's desk. Every high-profile missing persons case generates noise, and the Nancy Guthrie case was no different. While the FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department were executing one of the most coordinated operations in this investigation's short history, a separate and entirely unrelated thread was polluting the information space around this case. A man named Derek Kayla contacted individuals connected to the Guthrie family and claimed to have information about Nancy's whereabouts. He did not offer that information freely. He attached a financial demand to it. That is not a tip. That is extortion. Kala was subsequently taken into federal custody and charged with extortion in connection with the Guthrie case. This matters for one specific reason. In the days following Kayla's emergence, significant media attention shifted toward him. Speculation ran ahead of confirmed facts. And for a brief window, the digital noise around his arrest threatened to obscure the physical investigation that was quietly building toward the February 13 raid. Investigators did not lose focus. The Kala thread was isolated, processed, and handed to federal prosecutors within days. The forensic team kept their eyes on the biological evidence. The genealogy analysts kept building the family tree. What would you do if you were the detective assigned to filter real leads from deliberate interference? Drop your answer in the comments right now. The real breakthrough was never going to come from a phone call. It was always going to come from the evidence. One detail buried inside the official investigative requests has gone largely unnoticed in mainstream coverage, and it reframes everything you think you know about how this operation was planned. When law enforcement began canvassing the neighborhood around Nancy Guthrie's property for surveillance footage, the standard request window for a missing persons case is typically 48 to 72 hours prior to the reported disappearance. Investigators ask for recent footage, they build a short timeline, they look for anomalies close to the event. That is not what happened here. The formal request submitted to residents and businesses in the surrounding area asked for footage dating back a full 31 days before Nancy Guthrie was reported missing. 31 days. That is not a standard canvas window. That is a pre-operational surveillance theory being tested against physical evidence. What investigators were looking for was a pattern. Not a single visit, a repeated presence. Someone who had been watching that property, mapping its routines, identifying its vulnerabilities, and timing its occupants' movements across an entire month before February 1. The masked figure on the porch did not arrive uninformed. The evidence suggests that individual had been building a operational picture of that residence for weeks. Forensic behavioral analysts refer to this as pre-attack reconnaissance. It is a documented pattern in cases involving deliberate, planned entries into occupied residences. The level of preparation it implies elevates this case beyond opportunistic crime into a category that requires a very different investigative framework. Every camera, every timestamp, every license plate captured within a 1-mile radius over 31 days is now part of this evidence pool. And somewhere inside that footage, investigators believe the answer is already there, waiting to be found. Here is where this case stands right now. And the honest answer is that the most important question in this entire investigation remains completely open. Nancy Guthrie has not been found. As of the latest confirmed reporting, her whereabouts are unknown. The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department have not publicly confirmed the recovery of the 3 specific items listed on the February 13 search warrant. No formal charges have been filed in connection with her disappearance. The 3 individuals detained that night walked out of questioning and back into their lives. The investigation continues. But here is what this case has already established. The individual who approached that porch on February 1 was not acting randomly. The disconnection of the surveillance system and the cardiac monitoring device within a 16-minute window was deliberate and coordinated. The DNA evidence was specific enough to direct a federal task force to a residential address less than 2 miles away, and 31 days of pre-operational activity suggests a level of planning that does not happen without purpose. Someone knows where Nancy Guthrie is. That is not speculation. That is the logical conclusion of every forensic thread this investigation has pulled so far. If you have any information related to this case, contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department directly. Do not sit on it. Do not assume someone else has already called. You could be the variable that changes everything. This case is not closed. This channel will keep following it. If you want to be here when the next development breaks, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell, because when this case moves, it moves fast, and you do not want to be the last one to know. Nancy Guthrie deserves answers, and so does everyone watching this right now.